All right, welcome back to another episode of AGB Live Bible Study. I am so pleased to be joined by some of my friends and former players and people you guys have seen before. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but first, I'm just I know I probably say this every week, but I really, really am excited about this topic. I think it's a topic that is really hitting home for a lot of people in modern society, Western society, where we're so busy and we've got so much going on, but we still love the Lord. We still want to pursue truth. We still want to be, around the idea of God. But sometimes we struggle with church. Let's just be honest. We struggle with church attendance. We struggle with the things that go along with that. And today I wanted to bring on some people that I trust to have an honest conversation about that. And so, as you guys know, judgment-free zone, to kind of be ourselves and talk about some tough topics with the purpose of everyone here getting better. So I want to say at the forefront that I don't think anybody, whether you're on the pro go to church or on the pro spiritual side, is going to leave today without hopefully feeling a little bit of accountability and some things that we can all stretch ourselves a little bit. So with that said, let's do some introductions and let's start out with our first timer. I'm so pleased to be joined by my brother, Jason Dewey.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Man, what an honor to be with you, and excited to see just how you've been stepping into this space and paying attention a little bit from a distance. So my connection with Coach Rick is my son, who's now a sophomore at U of I, played basketball for him amongst many other men. And I've always told him Coach Rick was the best coach that he ever had. I wish we would have had him for more time and more seasons, but grateful for the way he always cared, not just for him as a player, but more importantly for him as a young man. So thank you for that, first and foremost. I'm here partially because I guess of not only my connection with Coach, but the role that I play in our community. I serve as a co-senior pastor at the Sign of the Dove Church in Waukegan. We're a non-denominational, intentionally multi-ethnic community of people who, trying to be spirit-led and compassion-driven. So that's kind of that is my day job now for the past 8 years, and do some other things, including some nonprofit work with an organization called ROPE, which is trying to help men successfully re-enter the community from being impacted by the justice system. So got a family, a lovely wife, married for 25 years almost. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. And we've got 4 kids, 2 grandkids, and a little dog. So that's the quick intro. I hope that was sufficient.
That's great, man. That's great. That's exactly who you are. And I think we can find a way to talk about that side project here today. I think that aligns. So I want to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure.
Renee is back. Been a while. Missed you, girl.
Yeah, no, I missed you guys. So my name's Renee. I would say, young in my biblical organized faith, but I am well seasoned in my spirituality and my constant quest for truth and answers and meaning. I love AGB. I love AGB Bible study, and I just love everyone coming together and learning, because I can only do so much on my own. So
appreciate that. And then my brother-in-law is back. Omega, say what's up.
What's going on, Coach? What's going on, AGB? Thanks for having me back. I rap, sing, yodel. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Precious, which is Coach Rick's big sister. And, we just try to keep Coach Rick in line, make sure he's off in the straight and narrow. And
catching those chest L's every Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
No, but he's being humble, but Omega is a little bit quasi famous. He does a lot of work in the Christian hip hop community, and the hip hop community does some music for some very popular video games. He has his own podcast that's jumping off. He's got a contract with Sirius XM, so he's done a lot of good things. I'm excited to hear from you today, brother. Hey, look at me, brother. Be honest, man. I want you to be yourself, okay?
Oh, gosh.
And then, of course, we got my man from CDH, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm on the meeting. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm Jeremiah. I'm a high schooler at Green Durham Hall High School. I'm a senior. Yeah, I'm back. I did the 12-week program with Coach Rick through CDH and our what's it called, the Captain's Council, and yeah, just super excited. I've been a Lutheran all my life, all 18 years, and so been in through the institutionalized church, but also a lot of my family has been through the what we're going to be talking about tonight, where it's a little bit more self-led spirituality. So I'm excited to see both sides and give my input.
I love that. I hope today, if you guys are joining us live, or if you do it on the feed on the replay, I want you to engage in this one. I think this is a topic where people have thoughts, they have opinions. Please throw some things in the comments. If we see them live, we'll put them up on the stream. We'll all discuss them. But I think the five of us can represent a lot of different points of view. So let's start off with this one first, right? So what I did is I just asked artificial intelligence, what are the top 5 reasons why people don't go to church? And I just thought we'll take those to sort of frame our conversation, but it can go wherever it goes. So the first one that came up is, a response to Matthew 7:3-5, that people are holding Christians accountable to the fact that what Matthew 7:3-5 talks about, which we've talked about on this cast before, which is that's the one where they say, how can you be so concerned about the speck in your own eye that you ignore the plank coming out of your own? You're so concerned about the speck in someone else's, but you ignore the plank that comes out of your own. And so people are saying sometimes they're holding Christians accountable to not doing that and feeling a sense of judgment and hypocrisy amongst the Christian faith. Who wants to take that one first?
Well, I feel like I should start as the pastor. And first, just to acknowledge that is real, that there have been, throughout history, there have been, numerous ways that those under the name of the Christian church have misrepresented Jesus and his ways, right? And I think we have to just be real and honest and acknowledge that has not only happened historically, in some really significant, dangerous, destructive ways, but it still is happening presently, both institutionally in some ways, but even on a personal, individual level, right? There are people that say one thing and act another way, or claim to hold something, and I'm not talking about like the reality. I mean, we all mess up in some ways, right? Yeah. So we all have our own little faults, but I'm talking more significant, intentional things. I think that is real. So I just wanted to start there, just by saying, like, let's just be honest and not ignore the fact that there has been some really, really, horrible representation of what was not supposed to be the Christian faith and the way that Jesus lived it out, but has been unfortunately misrepresented in so many ways.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. And I think it is safe to say, but to also be fair to all of us is, that's not new. I mean, that's been since the beginning of time. I mean, when we look at the story of Jesus, he's coming up against that, in his own ministry. And so I think that's what he was saying in Matthew 7:3-5. And so it's always been there, but it's a lot like a lot of things in our society today that have always been there. But what hasn't been there is everyone with a camera in their pocket. You know what I mean? And so now what we can see is more access and more viewpoints for that judgment. And so there are people walking the streets, literally putting microphones in the faces of people and preaching on the streets in a condemning way that ultimately, I think, damages the view of Christianity.
Yeah, but at its core, the word of God is going to violate our flesh. It says it divides what us soul and spirit. The word of God is a violation to our selfish desires. And so, but I think where conviction and condemnation kind of gets blurred a lot of times in the church is, depending on that preacher's preaching style, he may be more fire and brimstone. There's other preachers that are more inclusive, and let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about life over a cup of coffee. And then you have the the more fiery guys out there. There's no rhyme or reason. I've been convicted and hurt by both styles, honestly. Be honest, in my 44 years of life. So that there's not, I know we probably prefer the more inclusive. Hey, we're all struggling. We're all humans. We're all on this earth having a human experience. Jesus Christ lived 33 years and had human experiences. And so he understands when we're battling with something, we don't have a God that's not relevant to the human experience, but Christ came and had a human experience with us, so he can identify and know when we're struggling and stuff. So but yeah, conviction is a great thing. The word of God violating our selfish desires is a great thing, but I think sometimes some preachers and ministries, they go so far where conviction starts turning into condemnation, and people don't want to go to church to be condemned. Most people know that they're not living right, and so they don't want to go to church and be condemned or yelled at. And so but sometimes that's just a style issue on that preacher's preaching style, I think.
Jeremiah, what do you think? Do you think, that judgment is something to run away from, or is it something that we're just being babies and we should actually run towards it?
Yeah. And so as I was just thinking, I was wondering, like, how much of that judgment is expectations on ourselves. Like when we walk into church, I wonder how much of that is actually on ourselves, where we walk into church and especially new members, I noticed is like a very kind of commonality, or people that I talk to at school that don't regularly go to church, but I'm like trying to like say, hey, maybe come check it out. It's not too far from your house. Just go check it out maybe Sunday morning. And they're like, well, I just don't know if I fit in. Mm-hmm. Like looking at it from an internal perspective. And I think that a lot of that judgment is actually from themselves, but also going back to the church's way. I know that it's difficult, especially for, as I've seen in my life, is difficult for people to deal with diversity in terms of that they feel like everybody's got to be on the same level, or if that you're on one level of your spirituality or your walk with Christ, or you don't know a whole lot, then they're better than you, or it's just like caste system in the church. It's like those who have been with the church for a long time, and then those who are just coming in, and it's kind of like this old faith, new faith kind of ordeal. Mm-hmm. And so I think, one, that a lot of that judgment comes from ourselves. And number two, I think that it's something, the judgment is something that both sides, the new faith, the old faith, however you want to describe it, they need to come together, because it definitely is ripping the church apart a little bit. So that's what I would say.
So Renee, I think he sets you up here perfectly, right? As our neighborhood new faith, right? Is that something you have expressed this to me a little bit, even about coming to this space? Like, so what would you say to Jeremiah? Is that just you inflicting that on yourself, or would you say, no, it's not me? I think I have felt judged at times.
Well, I think there's, it's kind of just the fear of the new, the unknown. Yeah, maybe I don't fit in, like kind of just that normal social, going into a new group is scary. But I mean, in kind of to give maybe those who are judgmental, those who are hypocrites, to give them some grace. I mean, okay, I drive a Ford, right? Mm-hmm. And I tell everyone, the Ford, great car. Great car, you don't know what you're missing out on. You drive a Chevy, you might really want to, get a Ford. Right. And that's not really me judging, but I'm sure the Chevy drivers feel like I'm, telling them what's up, I'm better. But, I'm really just saying I have this really good thing that I want to share with you, and you should really, check it out. Mm-hmm. So in terms of religion, when you kind of just think of it as like the other person just super enthusiastic, really wants to share, really wants to kind of bring you in. Sometimes the style, the approach isn't, maybe the greatest, but mm-hmm. I mean, it's coming from, a place of love. And once you identify that is what the root is, it's easy to overcome the feelings of judgment.
And how does that sit with you as a pastor, Pastor Dewey? I mean, you've got to take a microphone and you've got to prepare messages. Are you thinking about both the new faith and, or the sensitive faith or the old faith Or are you trying to get to both? Or are you just saying, I'm going to go like Omega said, where you're going to say, look, the Bible is what it is. It's supposed to get you to wrestle with this stuff. And my job is to do it.
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I think, there is certainly a reality that truth is truth. And at some level, right, we believe this, we follow this because we do believe and have experienced this to be true. But I think that the delivery of that is what we're talking about. So my intention and what I see from Jesus is he always came compassionately. He would at times reveal someone's struggle, their fault, their sin, but he was always pointing to what was better. And I think that is oftentimes the issue is we can get caught up focusing on don't do this, don't do that. My view of things is I think sometimes in the church, too much of trying to force behavior modification rather than directing people to the person who actually changes us and his desires to change us from the inside and let that flow to the outside. But too much work in the church has gone on trying to change the outside. And truthfully, Jesus had the same issue. He was, that's why he was challenging the church. He was challenging the church folk of the day, right? And so he was coming with truth, but always compassion. And so that's my intention. I hope that would be other pastors or believers' intention, is that we recognize, yes, there's love, but even in that cult, we're called to speak the truth. I mean, there's truth, but we're called to speak the truth in love. Yeah. And we haven't always balanced that well, unfortunately, but I think that is what Jesus showed us we're supposed to be doing.
I love that concept of pointing people to Jesus instead of trying to change their behavior, I think is so key, because, as fellow humans that share the planet together, I don't think it is our call to change other people's behavior. I think it is our call to, and Renee, I think you put it beautifully too. I mean, I always said, our relationship with God is so significant to us, but in the same essence of that four, it's just such a beautiful space. And for me as a coach, I have such peace of mind in my relationship with God that's the forward for me. That's what I'm trying to get other people to do, because I get a lot of people come to me without peace of mind. And I'm saying, okay, so you don't have peace of mind, and I know where you can get it. So how do I tell you that without assessing why you don't have peace of mind? Could it be because you haven't gone to the source? But Jason, I appreciate your compliment at the beginning, because that's where I would want to leave this part of the topic is you talked about my coaching style on a basketball court, right? When you watch me coach, no one ever sees me, screaming. I'm not yelling at people or cursing at people or embarrassing people. But anyone who's ever played for me knows that the words that I'm saying when they get really close to me on their way out is very direct. If you're not playing well, I'm telling you, you're not playing well. If I want you to box out, I'm telling you, you got to box out, or I'm going to put you on the bench. But by the time I've said that, the players know I love them. So now they're ready to respond to the hard message. So I think that would be my message to the Christian community is we've got to practice love first. You've got to practice love, and you got to know that you've established some care and some genuine connection with the people. And then I think people are more open to hearing how you feel about your forward. Any other thoughts on that topic before we go to the second one, which I think is really interesting?
I think everybody nailed it on the head.
Yeah. All right, let's hide him and let's show this guy. All right, so I'm not as familiar with this verse as I was with the Matthew verse, but entertainment over substance. And when I was researching this verse kind of stuck out to me. 2 Timothy 4:3-4. Let's read it. For the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. So, Pastor Dewey, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm interpreting that as Paul telling one of his preachers, hey, there's going to come a time where the only people that are going to get the most people in their congregation are the ones that are saying what people want to hear. So what we just talked about, that judgment thing, so people are going to be like, I'm going to make my church not very judgy. I'm going to make my church, I'm going to bring the most popular music from the radio to my church. And we're going to, do the things that are being done on TikTok at my church so that attendance is number one. and this wrestle is not. That's how I interpret that. Am I reading that wrong? And whether I am or not, what are your thoughts on it?
No, I think you're right. Definitely, it's like compromising to try to gain the praise of the listener without necessarily presenting the truth. And I think that's the other piece. I would say it's not just the stuff that you add, but it's the compromising on what the truth is or what the gospel is. And again, that's not a behavior modification practice. It's, I'm not going to lead you to Jesus. I'm just going to try to make you feel like everything's good. You're happy. You can be the best you. You can, be careful not to say a phrase that some other pastor uses, but put anybody out there. But, you can, that's to me. It's we trying to give you what you want, but we're also withholding what you really need. And that's problematic in multiple ways.
I wish we could experience church without the pastor and the staff having to deal with, the light bill, paying mortgage, paying rental space for the church. I wish we could experience that without those pressures. At the end of the day, church is a business, and you won't have a congregation if you don't have your lights on, and I'm not saying that every pastor struggles with shifting their message to maximize their attendance, but I'm sure it's a real challenge sometimes. You think about the first generation of New Testament believers after Jesus ascended. They were church as we think of it was basically like a Bible study in someone's living room or someone's upstairs, and so they didn't have the same pressures of establishing a business or a place, yet they also had to deal with persecution and their whole families, going to the Colosseum to get wiped out if they didn't denounce Jesus. So they dealt with their own pressures in their day. But, the New Testament experience was not like it is today. There was no light bill. There was no, and there was no sense of even tithing. It was everybody as a community put everything they had in a pot. And then the apostles divvied up so no one was lacking. We we would never be able to pull something off like that. In today's times where it's like, I'm gonna give all my riches, all my finances to the church, and then let the church divvy it up. So if somebody only had $5 to contribute and I had $500,000 to contribute, everybody was going to be evened out. That's how the first generation operated. So, but it's just a lot of pressures. And even on social media, there's a lot of pastors that's doing, clips of their sermons and stuff like that, rightfully so. And you select the most fiery message that's gonna either tickle the ears of people or get them clutching their pearls like, oh, I can't believe he said that. I can't believe she said that. And you get intrigued to know more and stuff. And so, I don't know if I had I'm trying to come in for a landing, but that's.
I don't know about the landing, but I know when you were up in that area, you said a lot that it needs to be talked about. I mean, that is like to even say, which I'm surprised actually, when I look through these topics that are coming up, the money issue is not even on here, but I don't see how we could have a talk without talking about it. Well, when you say the church is a business, it made me cringe a little bit because I'm like, is it?
It's a business because, me and my wife, we argue about this all the time, but as New Testament believers, we do not have to tithe anymore. But in the ecosystem of American church, you have that emotional moment. The musicians play, and then the pastor or somebody is high on staff. They'll give their little emotional talk about why you should tithe, why you should give to God, and they'll misquote Malachi 3:16 or something like that. should a man rob God and stuff like that? When it's like, yo, I'm a New Testament believer. Jesus ripped the veil, just like I don't have to practice all the other, ceremonial things that that Israel did in the Old Testament. I don't have to tithe anymore. And then when they tithe produce. Why am I giving my weekly check when they didn't even tithe money like that in the Old Testament? And so, yeah, it's a business, and not all ministries have been ethical. They haven't taught the Bible soundly to the point where people are honestly out here thinking, if I don't give a 10th of my paycheck this week, God's gonna curse me. And that's not even like historically correct on tithing. That's just one thing. And I get mad when I'm almost 40 years old and I find out, oh, I'm gonna tithe no more. Wait, what? And so how I rationalize that in my thinking, tithing is an act of worship, but I am not under the mandate to tithe. But I still hear different ministries making it, twisting the word where it's supposed to be a mandate, and it's just not true. And so I liken that to be like, well, that's the business part of church is getting your congregation to steadily give on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And it's not cool with me, honestly.
I am absolutely not going to move off of that subject until I have Pastor Dewey respond to some of that stuff. But I want to hear from Renee and Jeremiah specifically on the subject of the entertainment piece. Like how important is that to you guys to feel like, like if the singer is singing, that the singing is good and that there's a projector for the words and that the lights look good? And like, how much is that important? Or do you think that gets overdone, or where are you guys at on that?
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this is tough. I would say, so I've had both experiences where currently I go to more contemporary church where it's more like, current worship songs. And then my dad, whenever we go back to his hometown, we go to a pretty traditional church. And honestly, like both experiences they're different experiences for, I don't want to say different people, but for people who might enjoy different things, I might say there is definitely a preference. But in terms of the entertainment thing, I'd say that not that church is more enjoyable, because I don't want to go from like, hey, I'm just going to church for fun. Like that's not what it is about at all. But I would say that there is definitely an emphasis on entertainment. You see mega churches nowadays that have 16,000, 18,000 people showing up. You got I would say that my church has done a great job in terms of there is definitely an entertainment piece where it's like we get to Christmas and it's like, whoa, this is like a whole light show going on here, and we're downloading apps and we're doing all this. So I'm like, whoa, this is a little too much. But yeah, there's definitely an entertainment piece, and I think that to keep the people there and keep people entertained, especially with shorter attention spans nowadays, there's definitely is an effort. But yeah, I'm going to stop there, but that's where I think there is a factor.
Respect. Renee?
I don't feel like I have enough experience in different churches to speak to this, but I mean, the bells and whistles are kind of a red flag to me in general, just because, I don't know, quality over quantity. I'm not like going to the mall on a Saturday because it's going to be packed and crowded. So like, I'm not going to, like, I don't really, you know what I mean? So, but people enjoy that, and that's fine. And everybody loves good music, so that's cool too. But, quality over quantity. What is the actual content, and is it giving me value? If it is, great, regardless of the setting. But the mega church vibe, I just doesn't really, kind of see through it.
If I could take a minute to do a little bit of teaching, because I like to talk about things that help people a little bit. So I always make the emphasis on the word entertainment versus the word amusement, right? I've taught this in AGB, right? Where it's like the word entertainment, literally, it means to enter into a state of containment. So it is designed to hold you. And so on that front, entertainment itself is not bad. It's designed to hold your attention. If the thing that's holding your attention is worship chords, from the 1 to the 4, which is scientifically designed to make you feel peaceful, And that's why most worship songs are 1 and 4 and 6 and like different music things that make you feel good and hold you there in the presence of God. I don't think anyone should but apologize for that. I think they should execute that as well as they possibly can, because it's scientifically, and by scientifically, I mean in God's design for it to be impactful. But amusement is a very dangerous word. It means the opposite of muse. And to muse, if I said, Renee, you're my muse, I wrote a poem, like you're my inspiration is what it means. And so when you're amusing, you're being opposite of inspiring. And so when Paul writes to Timothy and warns about the preachers who are intentionally saying what the ear wants to hear, I think about amusement, and I say we guard against that, and we don't make it about not inspiring you, just trying to make sure that you're having fun. And that would be my point of view. So, but Pastor Dewey, I want to take it back to you on not only putting a bow on that part, but also this idea of church being business. As someone who runs a church, what do you say to that?
Yeah. So just one point to the last point, I'll use your word. I think most importantly is authenticity. I can't even say it. Authenticity outweighing amusement or any form, right? Like is it genuine? Is it real? And is it, like you said, as we sort of said, pointing to who we're, encouraging people to worship. So that part, which honestly translate even to what you're saying. And I mean, I feel you, Omega. I know that in many cases that has been people's experience. So I think the reality is that, yes, there are spaces where church has become consumed from more of a business model. I don't think that's the intention or the purpose of what the church is supposed to be, but it certainly has become that in some places. And I think if we boil it down and some of what we started with, it's like, are we doing things for selfish gain, or is this really out of worship for the Lord and trying to lead people to him? And so whether that's tithing or other, things we proclaim across the pulpit, or what we put in the lights and the music, is all of that, is the intention to move people to know Jesus, to experience him, and to be made to be like him so they can go and share that faith, right? So I mean, the tithing conversation is certainly a longer one, but I honestly, I feel you. I think actually what Jesus called us to in the New Testament is actually a higher standard. Where are you doing from your heart, right? What is your giving from your heart? What's really sacrificial? Because honestly, for some of us, 10%, it may not even be sacrificial. So same thing he talked about with lust and adultery. Is it just, you did not necessarily sleep with a woman, but you looked at her, right? So there's a higher calling, there's a higher standard, all because he's wanting us to experience the best of what he has, right? And I think that's what church is supposed to help us to do, to know him, to experience him. But yeah, there is a challenge. I mean, American church, I mean, we don't have a large church by American standards, 125 people on a Sunday, but there's still administrative stuff. There's still organizational stuff. You do have bills you have to pay. But I would want them to remove me if I got to the point where I was doing things because I was concerned about the money and the people's potential to give me their money. I wouldn't be a shepherd. I would be a businessman. I've done corporate life. I don't want that life. God has called me to be a shepherd. So I have to be leading people towards truth, towards the green pastures where they can find that peace of mind that you mentioned, Coach. But that's not where everyone is. And it gets harder. But even in the bigger mega churches, it's not necessarily my vibe either. But I think what I hope that they're trying to do is still cultivate community and connection and growing people in their faith. It's a lot harder to do when you have a bigger budget, a bigger building and all of that. But I think you can do it faithfully. But unfortunately, like everything else, people oftentimes get pulled into some selfish desires rather than truly serving people.
Yeah. So in the spirit of what I said at the forefront, where I want everyone to feel challenged today, and me and Jarrell and Omega, we're family. And so I want to challenge not only, just specifically you, but like anyone who's thinking like you. And, I know that that school of thought is out there. And it makes a lot of sense to me because as the next subject's going to lead us to, church hurt has come with a lot of people with money and things like that. So this is not a disagreement to what you said, but authentically, my challenge would be, I try to view everything that I have in my life, everything, 100% of what I have belongs to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, like this very oxygen that I get, to get another day, this job, this title, this family, this car, this house, and then yes, my bank account. Like, is especially, like, let's be real, like I'm from around the way, like my life has been no crystal stair. I know life without these things, and I know I could lose them tomorrow. So everything that I have feels precious, and I feel small when I think about a God who's allowed me to have this life. So the idea of getting to keep 90% of that it doesn't make it difficult for me to go to church and say, what can I give? And I also think this is in support of what you're saying. Give is not just in dollars. It's also in my time. And I'm looking forward to speaking this week at the church that we're attending. And that's me giving my time. And they just recently lost their musician. And I immediately went to the pastor and said, look, I'm not very good, but if you want someone to just play the chord on time, when the song is ready to play, I'll play for you, because it's giving of that as well. If Renee texts me tomorrow, Jeremiah, you stay, hey, Rick, can you stay on for 20 minutes afterwards? I'll look at my wife, give her a little look. Hey, can I give him more minutes? And I'll give that time because I know how blessed I am to be in these spots. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think I just want to challenge pastors to preach it that way more, and not so much make it about guilt and you're going, like, something's going to happen to you unless you give me your money.
Right. And if I said anything that sounded like that, that was not my intention, because I'm 100% with you. That it's all of what we have, and it's out of gratitude, it's out of love. Like, every response we have should be because of the love we have for the Lord, right? How we use our time, how we use our resources, how we use our talents, treasures, whatever you want to call it, right? And to do that out of a loving heart, out of response of the love that we receive. So no, I'm 100% with you. So I just know that people get caught up in that tithing thing, and it's one of those things that can create confusion that's unnecessary, because again, we're missing what's the real heart and what's the real call, because we're overly focusing on a behavior.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see that in every craft. Like, there's not a position on the planet where you don't have people who make that position look bad, right? You go to some doctors, like, well, is that how you talk to all your patients? You go to some lawyers and you're like, oh, that's why they make jokes about lawyers. You know what I mean? Policemen, we can go on and on. Then there are other people that do those jobs so genuine and so authentic, and they're doing it for the right reason. And so I guess that's the perfect segue to this next one, because I think this one is very popular, right? Let's read Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. These are red letters. I feel like I'm doing that a disservice. Let's read back a little bit. I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. These are the red letters. This is Jesus Christ speaking to people and saying, hey, listen, if you are owning a space and you are running a church, or you're doing a small group, or you're doing a Bible study, and you're inviting people in to get to know me, I love you. You've got a great place in the kingdom of heaven. That's our job in the kingdom of heaven. Get in to the Ford and then tell everyone how great the Ford is, right? That's our job. But if you do that, and because they trusted you like little children, and they submit to your leadership, and you use that to tear them away from me, you'd be better off not having the church at all.
Oh my God.
You'd be better off on the streets of Las Vegas. Like, just go, like, do your thing. because that is the worst thing possible. That's how I'm reading that. I hate to keep the linear, but I love deferring to you, Pastor Dewey, because again, I like to feel small in where I'm at. I want to learn. Correct me if I'm wrong, back me up if I'm not, and let's get that start going on. Some of us have experienced church hurt, and if you have, please be vulnerable and share that with me. I got one, but I'll go last. And then what are your thoughts?
Oh.
I threw that to you, Pastor Dewey.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I think how you interpreting it is correct, and there's a great responsibility on those of us who have some position of influence and leadership, which we can all have. It doesn't have to be the pastor, but certainly pastors, teachers have the most in this sense. Even scripturally, Jesus called out the rabbis, and there was even Old Testament and New Testament. There was challenges to people being misled. So it's serious. I can tell you personally, one of my pain points, if you will, and things that weighs on me is whenever it's a Sunday morning and I'm going to be preaching, my biggest concern is I don't want to misrepresent the Lord. I don't want to share anything that's going to be untrue or let my own opinion slip in on something that may not be right. So I try to be diligent to study and prepare and to know that to the best of my knowledge, right, I'm representing it properly, and more than that, just carrying his heart. And yeah, even as we're working with people in the church, trying to lead with compassion, trying to give more grace than anything else. And we've got a diverse church in multiple ways, one of which is people from all sorts of different denominational or non-church, unchurched backgrounds. But yet, I've seen many people coming in with war stories, if you will, of pains that they've gone through in the church. And we've had own issues in our own church. I mean, let's just be honest. I think there's one perfect church when it was Jesus by himself. You add people, you add problems. I mean, it's just how it goes, right? Yeah. So nobody's perfect, but how we handle how we care and love each other. I mean, there's so much teaching in the New Testament to the churches, mostly around really fleshing out the second of the greatest commandment. What does it look like to love one another? Because I think they knew that it was going to be a problem, just how we interact. And so it has happened. It's real. I get it. And I'm always trying to be part of a person's healing process in the faith rather than inflicting more wounds.
Now, Renee, I mean, I know that you, like I said, you're a veteran when it comes to spiritual pursuits. So I guess I'll ask this beyond the Christian church. Have you ever been let down, disappointed, hurt by the people involved in your spiritual pursuits?
Definitely. I would say whenever there is shaming involved or guilting, I mean, that's just not what any of it is about, or closed-mindedness. So those three things is kind of a trifecta for hurt, and just kind of steering off course of what the actual, what the main goal and the mission is, which is, I mean, really whatever you want it to be, but being open and finding your own way and finding your own peace and your answers. And at least that's my interpretation on what it's all about. So whenever there's, rules and guidelines, it's always good to have some structure, but when it's becoming objective and not personalized, I
want to ask it to you this way, hypothetically. So I think we all agree that if you have a direct hurt, someone offended you, someone stole from you, someone abused you, that sort of thing, that's one category, right? But what's popular in this space that we're talking about, where church hurt in quotes, is sort of like indirect hurt. Like, we won't say any names, right? But there are these people that amass these awesome followings, and people think of them as these awesome, trustworthy leaders, and then only to find out that the money was corrupt behind the scenes, or there was adultery behind the scenes, or something like that. So hypothetically, right, you respect me, you love AGB, you're helping me build this thing, and if I told you, hey, I need $100 because I'm going to take that and donate it to St. Jude's, and then you found out I took the $100 to buy some Jordans. You know what I mean? Like just hypothetically, how would you categorize that as hurt? And would that take you away from trusting leaders going forward in your young life?
I mean, I would just say that's kind of messed up on a like 1-to-1 scale. I don't think I could generalize it, but in terms of spirituality, I would say is much more individualized than a more organized religion. And it's, I feel like, harder to experience that hurt because of that kind of individual like mindset on it, that like your path to spirituality is not the same as mine. So like what you think and like what you're trying to project onto me isn't really relevant to me. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to avoid that hurt, and when it's, yeah, you know what I mean?
But that's going to be huge for our final one. So I want you to hold that space because you're going to be really important when we get to this final thing that we're going to talk about in here in a second. Jeremiah, what are your thoughts on church hurt? Have you experienced it?
Yeah. So, how do I want to put this? I haven't experienced any personally. I've been to a lot of different churches. I've lived in 4 different states. I've attended numerous churches, and I would say that I want to be careful here.
As long to me, if you don't mention a name, then you're in safe space. I don't want to take down any names. That's not my style. But because that's gossip at that point. But if you're just talking about an experience and leave it in generalities, then there is no limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what was I going to say? I think that it's a little strange in that people, when we talk about church hurt, people are like, I remember what I was going to say. Okay, but it gets politicized, especially as I'm younger. I go to a all Catholic school, and a lot of people actually are mostly don't have faith. Like they are either atheistic or atheist, or they just don't believe in a higher power at all. And so I think it's so politicized now, where it's like people, the politics of it start to hurt people. I know there are people at my school who view others as or project hate or project like this division, and that really turns people away in terms of like, well, it's not even the message anymore. It's just you projecting your politics on me and whether I fit in this category or not. And that's how you'll accept me if I come to whether I'm in church or not. And that, and for somebody who's in the church, that hurts me because it's like the church could do so many people so much good. Let me stop there. Not the church, but Jesus can do so much good for so many people. And I see people in these lives, but they're just so afraid because they're like, well, going back to that judgment, it's like the politics are so ingrained in these people's minds, especially at such a young age. Nowadays, where politics is just everywhere, and they're like, well, these people don't fit in this category, so I'm a little afraid for the future of what that might look like. Where you got all of these people that are single-minded and divided and afraid of people who are going to judge them going into the future, and I can't really blame them for their church hurt at all. Because it's even people who aren't in power in the church, it's being fed at such a young age that these politics are more important than the message of Christ and what that actually means, and how they can affect others positively. So that's what I see.
We had a chapel at Judson once, and I won't say her name, but someone I gave a space for people to give their testimony. And someone stood up and their testimony was, I went away from the church. And the reason why I went away from the church is because I found out that almost every church has an agenda, has their own agenda. And she was like, I was turned off by that. And ever since she said that, it gave me words. It gave me words to explain how a lot of people feel. And sometimes that agenda, to Omega's point, is money. Sometimes that agenda is politics. And when you can sniff out an agenda that seems to be different than just leading people to the peace of mind that is promised, I think that can be repelling at times. So I appreciate that honesty. Omega, I feel like You don't need a segue, so go.
Oh man. Well, I have been church hurt in my life, and church hurt is horrible. It took me years to trust leadership. Again, when I was in college, I had a pastor that was trying to shape and mold me into something where after I finished my undergrad, I would go to another college to be a campus pastor. I didn't think that God was calling me to be a campus pastor. I like to creatively, I like to, I like to rap. I'm a Christian rapper, but the church I was going to was trying to mold me into a worship leader. And for people that's in the creative arts, having somebody try to shape you into what they think you should do is death. Like, no. But the issue for me back then was, and I see a lot of, not a lot, but there are some churches that hang on to this, where the pastor feels like, if I say something to you, you need to consider it like God is saying it to you. Like I represent the voice of God in your life. And that is so scary, because that is still a man or woman with their own biases, with their own, what they like and what they value as, what they value. And back in the day, I was like, well, gosh, I'm in a conundrum. So, because I'm like, I do not agree with my pastor and what he's trying to shape and mold me to do, especially after my undergrad education. But he's talking as the voice of God. So if I don't obey what my pastor's saying, I'm not obeying God. It's jammed me up for a lot of years. I was like, what is it? Can I trust man to speak, in my life as a representation of God? Or should I feel what feels natural and just go with, what I feel God is, the vision that God has given me for my life? But I'm also a sinful, selfish person. So, is my will really just my selfish? It jammed me up for a long time. And even now in my 40s, I'm very weary of leadership. And I'm like, I gotta know this word for myself. I gotta lean into my own relationship with Christ and cultivate that relationship. So I'm not out here drinking the Kool-Aid of a pastor that's really high on his own words and his own authority. And I will and I'm a creative person too, so a lot of this is exacerbated. But I don't like trying to fit in another man's universe or another man's perspective of what they think I should do. It was a horrible experience. I left the church for a while because of that. And I was like, nah, this ain't it. I need to hear God for myself. So, but now removed from that church hurt, I'm like, well, God, it's kind of like a balance. It's like, I want to know God's will for my life myself, but I also need to it's very important to keep my heart open for rebuke, for correction and instruction. And even for God may use another person to say, hey, I see this on your life, consider this. And so it's really a dance of knowing God for yourself, but being open to, him speaking through another person.
That's such a good segue to the final one, because what you're saying to me, Omega, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is, I still love the Lord. I still want to pursue God, but I'm sometimes feel distracted or more repelled from doing that when I follow a human leader. So I want to pursue him on my own, through my creativity, through my arts, through my time in the word. And so the question is, can I do that? Can I pursue God on my own? Listen, we are talking about thousands of years and tons of technology and so much access. Here we are, 5 of us, all around from different places, different states, different walks of life. and we're connecting. And it says where two or more are gathered, he is there. Can we have church here? So I want to get into that, but let's use the word to kind of like get us into that conversation. We're in Hebrews 10:24 and 25. It says, and let us consider how we may spur one another toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So how I interpret this is Paul again saying, hey, spur one another means to like stir each other up, motivate each other, wrestle with each other, hold each other accountable, agree with each other, validate, give each other pats on the back, like a basketball team. Like, when I'm coaching, I'm like, hey, I want to lead the league in touches. Like, I want high fives. I want us to be connected. When I say team on 3, family on 6, like, don't say if you don't mean it. Like, that's the way I coach. I don't want you in the circle if you aren't actually part of the family, right? And I think as believers, that's what the body of Christ is saying. Jesus says you can't tell the hand, the arm can't tell the hand, I don't need yours. I'm paraphrasing, but so even back in the early church, to your point, Omega, he said, let's not give up on meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. He's saying that about the early church. So even the early church was struggling, saying, I'm going to do this on my own. Technology has made it so easy for us to do it on our own. Can we do it on our own? Pastor Dewey.
Well, I think there's two parts of this in my mind. There's the connection issue, and then there's related but slightly separate sort of church. Do I need a church, right? So, but let me start with the connection, because I think that yes, you can have relationship with God on your own. Yes, you can have connection with God on your own. It starts there, right? It starts with that individual relationship that he desires to have with each of us. But I would suggest that it is not intended to stop there. So that's a foundation. But if you go, and I won't preach, I promise, but if you go through the Bible and you start in the first chapter, you see it begins with, God creating a partner for Adam, because there was a need for partnership and companionship. You go through scriptures, and not even just marriage, you see friendship, you see siblings, you eventually see disciples. Even when Jesus sent out the disciples to start churches, he sent them out in pairs all of the time. There's this theme of the need we have for each other. Plenty of verses all throughout the scriptures, Proverbs, right? Iron sharpens iron. Who's there to pick you up when you fall down? I think you've got Ecclesiastes as one of these. So there's, by design, God created us for a connection. First, because he wanted to connect with us. That's the reason that there's humanity on this earth, because he wanted a relationship with us. But then secondly, and almost just as importantly, I think, he designed us to be in connection with each other. Well, let's take it to basketball, Rick. I'll just say it this way. I think God is the greatest coach of all time. He wanted a team. So you can play basketball on your own. You can develop your shot, which I never did. You can work on the ball handling. I guess you could even try rebounding on your own. But basketball was intended to be played as part of a team. And I think that was God's design for us. He calls it family. He calls it his body of Christ. He calls it the kingdom of God. He designed us because he wanted children as part of his family. And part of that includes not just the personal father-son, father-daughter thing, but includes the relationship together as family. So, there's so much more. But yes, you can. But the fullness of what he's created us and purposed us for is to have connection with him and connection together with each other, with him in our midst.
It's really solid. I never even thought about it that way. And that's why I love our game. Basketball is one of the most accessible sports in the world. If you go down any neighborhood in the country, you're going to see basketball hoops all around the neighborhood. I mean, everyone has a basketball hoop. That doesn't mean everyone's a basketball player. People like to shoot around in their neighborhood or whatever. That doesn't mean they want to join a team and put on a jersey and go be a part of something bigger than themselves.
There you go.
And that's, not to give away my final thoughts, but that's where I'm at on it. It's about, can you get yourself small? enough to want to be about something bigger than yourself? Or are you seeking out God on your own because you are satisfied with yourself?
Mm.
Renee, you're our neighborhood spiritual seeker. How important is community to you?
Well, I mean, we all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, well, that was, debunked. Self-actualization got bumped off the top, and sense of belonging is number one. So in that aspect, community is everything, and none of us can, walk this life alone. Like, hands down, period. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I don't know if anyone knows Alan Watts. He's kind of famous for interpreting like Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu scripture and philosophy and like interpreting it into, a digestible way.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that you are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself, meaning like the ability for us to even reflect and see anything that we're seeing is proof that we are the universe, we are God observing ourselves.
Mm.
And in that context, like you have everything you need as your own self. You have the tools and the ability to see the truth and to find peace in that. But that's kind of more of a like not as practical. Like you cannot get through life without community and others and support. But on a like kind of extreme side, like I've never really once felt like I've never felt like I need others to help me find peace and find God. I feel like I find that on my own every single day, whether I'm like looking at a leaf super close. Like you cannot deny that like the mathematical perfection in fractals and seashells and leaves, like that is God speaking to us, like literally saying, hello, I am here. So when you kind of like look a little harder and look at, what's hiding in plain sight, you can see it all on your own.
Yeah, I agree. I've had plenty of conversations with people that tell me the beautifully diverse ways in which they find God. People find him through art, they find him through music, they find him through nature, they find him through science, and I think Pastor Dewey said it perfectly. Can you? Yes. Can you? Yes. But is it ultimately our design? Too. That's the question. Jeremiah, what do you say? Oh my God. No, don't. Go ahead, man. I say, are you ready to grow?
I'm sorry. It's beeping in the background. I'm sorry. Hold on. Can you please go, Jeremiah? I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. I love going live.
Live TV.
So yeah, I would definitely agree in that with Pastor Dewey in that there's a portion of it where I read my Bible. I pray by myself. I listen to worship music by myself. Like that's all things that I do by myself. But in order for me to grow, there has to be community. I think the humility portion that you're talking about, Coach Rick, is huge. I think that there are a lot of people that I know that like they're so caught up and self-centered in the fact that like, well, I pray every day, I read the Bible every day, like I'm good, like I've got my spirituality figured out, and that's all the farther that it goes. And faith without action is dead. And so I think there's so much in that with community. There's so much action to be had where you can come together. Like there's certainly stories of people having incredible faithful actions by themselves, but it can never be done by one person. It's together. And I was even just thinking about how Jesus is all God and all man. And even when he's carrying the cross, I think there's this beautiful depiction of, is it Simon that comes out and helps him carry the cross? Yeah. And I think that's that beautiful connection of like, obviously Jesus doesn't need help. That's not what I'm saying here. But I think that the humanity of that, Jesus has been beaten up physically, like to the worst possible way that has ever been recorded. And that together they carried literally the sins of the world. And I think that's something that's incredible, a depiction for us in that carrying our yoke is not easy, but with Jesus and with community it becomes light.
I love that.
Yeah. So, you know, uh, it's a. I had to strip away. I had to strip away what I did not. I had to strip away the parts of church culture that was unnecessary. And then after that, I had to add back the community pieces that ground me. Yeah, yes, like me personally, as a music guy, I, you know, I find God a lot of times in the creative arts, and you know, but being a part of a community, having spiritual fathers, having spiritual brothers that can, you know, that can really just get in your personal space and say, hey, you're not living up to your standard. You're not living right. You know, I'm concerned for you. And, you know, it is absolutely essential for, you know, for the everyday believer that, you know, we have to keep our hearts postured to say, hey, I don't know everything. And yeah, I can. And honestly, like, knowing God, there's so many infinite degrees of knowing God. You can know God on the surface level. I had somebody tell me, specifically before, as I was about to get married, like, you think you're strong in the faith, you know, you think you're good. Wait till you get married. Like, marriage is designed to kill you, to kill your flesh, to show you how selfish you are. It's stuff you wouldn't even imagine. Like, man, I didn't know I was that selfish. You know, when you're single, but that's the power of marriage. And so it just really holds up a mirror and shows you, you know, just how much work you need to do on yourself. You're not there. You're not as strong as you think you are. And so that grounds me. That grounds me for the need to still be in community with you know, the local church I go to, that, you know, my spiritual father can call me and say, hey, I see you kind of acting up online right now. You're getting in debates with people. Man, God has not called you to do that, man. Stop making divisive comments about politics and stuff like that when you know that's not your calling. Like, what are you doing? But then I could be like, well, no, this is my personal choice, and I've already found God for myself, so you can't tell me anything. Like, that's the wrong posture to have. You know, you should consider the joy when someone wants to take the time out of their life to say, hey, man, I see something on you. You're not living up to your potential. And so that's why church is important. And I can testify as someone that's been on his own island before. I think I'm good. You know, and then, like, the Holy Spirit will show me, like, you think you're good, but you've tuned out leadership speaking in your life. And consequently, you've tuned out parts of my voice speaking in your life.
That's
You got
good.
to this point where, you know, you're good. You're good. You think you're good because you're not hearing my voice. You're toning me out. You're loving me from a distance. You're loving me from a distance.
Yeah.
And you can go the rest of your life thinking that's cool. But one day I'm going to unveil everything you missed out on because you just would not posture your heart to be spoken into. And so that's just a forewarning for anyone that, you know, finds God. Yeah, you'll find a sense of God. You'll find a sense of peace. But there's so many levels to this thing that God is like, I love you so much. I'm not going to reveal everything to you. But yeah, there's areas in your life that you need to work on. So just don't tune out people speaking in your life, because you could eventually tune out God from speaking in your life.
That's good. That's good. I think I shared, you know, when I was talking about the surrender piece, the humble piece, most of my thoughts, but I want to share one more thing on that subject of community that I found when I was studying this topic that I think is really powerful. Never has there ever been existence without community, because in Genesis, it says, let us make man in our image. That's God, Allah, the one God that we all are pointing to, saying, let us make man our image. Who is us? He's talking, that's triune talk. He's talking about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It's been there since the beginning of time. So even God himself is communal in nature. And so if he makes us after his own image, then we are designed to be communal in nature. And that's why, Renee, Greek philosophers and over time we thought it was self-actualization. But as we become more intelligent and more aware, we actually are getting closer to God. So many people want to tell me that the last and evil days are pulling us away from God. And they are only doing so in the sense that we have the option. It is so much easier to pull away from God on our own. But if you talk about the access and our understanding of who God is, that has progressed over time, not gotten further away. Old Testament, New Testament, early church, modern church, and where we are today, where, quite frankly, as an African American male of no means, if I was born 1,000 years ago, I may not even have access to the Bible. Someone would have had to read it to me. And the fact that it's now here to be able to punch in and get any verse I want means that I'm closer to him than we were 1,000 years ago. But that does not mean that our very nature from the beginning of time was not designed to be communal, because he is communal. And then when he sent his son, the entire Jewish population was waiting for a principality, like a monarch leader, like a king to take over and conquer land. And Jesus was like, no, that's not what this is. This is a municipality. This is a community. I'm going to start with 12 apostles, and we're going to go further than that. And we're going to change the world by building a kingdom. And I know it's a small example, but I just thought it was so good. The Ford. It's so good. Go tell as many people about it as possible. And let's see how we can expand it. Because I think when we expand this thing to be everybody, that's when the kingdom comes. I think that's what heaven looks like, when every knee bows and every tongue confesses that Jesus Christ is Lord. There's no more debate, and we all live in this communal place that we were designed to do. Those are kind of my final thoughts. So I know we're past the hour, but this is such a good topic. I knew it was going to be a good topic. It's rich with information. So let's go in reverse. I'm going to go from Jeremiah to Pastor Dewey. Give me your final thoughts on the whole subject of church attendance, community, pursuing God.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like we had talked about, I loved what you said about the triune God, and that in God's nature, it's meant to be communal. I think that it's so important, especially looking back at just in terms of serving others, in terms of faith and action. I think it's essential that community is a part of that. And then also talking about some of the things that we see in the church in our own lives. I think that as we look forward towards the future, like you said, we're so much more connected to God than I think we realize, in terms of the technology and where we've improved in those areas, and reaching out to people. And so I would just say that I got a lot out of talking with all of you. So I really appreciate it. In talking about also from Omega, talking about the surface level, that was something I needed to hear tonight as well. So I really appreciate that. Love it when you come on, brother. Appreciate you, man. Omega,
right.
Give us some final thoughts.
Man, I just thank y'all so much for having me. And this is cool. This is cool. I love it. I don't know if I have any final words. I just really enjoyed what everyone said. And I'm gonna play this episode back and really just think and process, because the heart is just so deceitful. You think you're over something, you still have residue of hurt, and I'm just identifying that, I'm over here making a big howdy do about man deceiving me. My own heart deceives me. My own emotions deceive me, and so I just want truth at the end of the day. I'm tired of fluff. I'm tired of hearing myself talk, because anything I can point to and try to judge another man, I'm guilty of. I say a lot of fluffy words, and my heart is not where it should be, or I make like I'm cool and I'm finding God for myself, but when my heart is deceiving me, I'm still, I didn't read the word. It's been days since I read the word, where I would have read the word if I was a little closer to my church community, and I may have went to church more regularly. And so I guess that's my final thing is it's easy to critique the church, and there's a lot of past hurts that the church needs to repent from, but our own hearts are so deceptive. And so, it's have a little grace on churches, even the business aspect, and just be kind to people, be kind to your own journey, because
That's good.
it's a lot. Yeah.
Good, brother. Right.
So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but I mean, I will say I'm someone who is strong in my values, but flexible in my beliefs. So I kind of like can get on any side. Like it all makes sense, and it's all valid, and it's all great if that's what you believe and that's what brings you peace. But I do feel like when I'm in this space, I feel like there's something I'm like not in on, but I only feel that way when I'm in this space. When I'm out of this space, like complete whole, everything is good. But just the way like you guys speak, it just, I don't know. I just feel like I'm missing something that is hard for me to like understand.
Can I say something to that?
Please.
You may be missing out on the bad aspects of the Christian walk, and for that I'm envious.
Well, maybe I just haven't, gotten there yet. Maybe that's to come, and that's part of the journey, and then I have to overcome that and practice my resilience there. So I don't know. I wouldn't be envious yet.
I just can't thank you enough, Renee. You always, always, always show up as your authentic self, and that's all I can ever ask of anyone. And I love the fact that we have relationships, so I don't necessarily have to like give you, a long answer to that here on this live, but that's something we can continue to talk about. And I think you've set yourself up well by saying I'm strong in my values and flexible in my beliefs. That's an open door, and I think that's what I think that door we've opened. And I know what Omega's saying. We've opened it in that personal side, and there's just all this stuff that we've talked about today that can distract us. But there is maybe something that you're missing, and I would love for you to keep, being curious about that. Pastor Dewey.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to be included in the conversation. Appreciate each of you, and I hope that you have felt that from me. And I know that these kind of conversations, honest and transparent, even when we have differences, don't happen the way that they should most of the time, and where we can just work through things, talk through things, and still respect each other. So I think my final thought is that anyone who still, maybe like you were sharing, Renee, or others who maybe feel like, I'm not sure if I'm there, I'm not sure even totally what I believe. First, I would just encourage you, and God says, you seek him, you can find him, and that he desires to draw you into himself. And so pursue that. I do think I would encourage you that it helps if you can find trusted people like Coach Rick and maybe some others in your life that have your best, actually care about you and have had experiences, whether it's, coach, pastor, teacher, friend, whatever we all need that. And if you're seeking and searching, it's even more important for the rest of us. Yeah. It may take on different shapes and sizes, but we need others. I've always looked at it this way. I think there's 3 levels of relationship that we all need. We need someone who is kind of like someone we receive from, like a mentor, maybe a pastor or a coach, someone that kind of pours into you primarily, although it always goes both ways. Then there's the peer, you're rubbing shoulders with. It's my brother, we kind of got the similar things going on in our lives. We're sharpening each other. And then there's people you're maybe putting a hand down to in a kind, generous way, whether it's younger in age, younger in faith, that maybe is on their own journey, that hasn't reached as much that you've learned, and you just want to help them. You want to disciple them. You want to encourage them. And so I think we all need that. That's the beauty of what a church can provide, but even outside of a formal structure, it could happen through relationships and through community, even if it's just 3 or 4 people in your life. So I hope that we can all find that, and hopefully we can, be encouraged by that. So thank you all.
That's awesome, man. Can't thank you guys enough. My final thoughts are, I'm going to keep them relatively short, but it's just this, like, I want everyone, especially if you come to an AGB live, or if you join our program, or if you just know who I am as a person, I want you to understand that we all have space to get better. None of us can step into a day and lose that sense of curiosity as to what we don't know, what we don't understand yet. What Renee expressed, we should all express. And those of us who become extremely certain to the point of intolerance and insensitivity and divisiveness, we are doing more harm than good. And so I want to challenge all of my believers. I want to challenge all of my spiritual leaders to understand that people were represented tonight in this conversation. It's not just the 5 of us. I think each one of us represented the voice of a multitude of people. And as spiritual leaders, we got to be really curious about how to reach those people, because we're in a warfare and other people are going to want to get people's attention as well. And I think that we've all got to be open to hearing from one another. On our side, for those of us who are still struggling to join a community, and I have been there, so please do not hear these thoughts as judgmental. All I can tell you is that there is just beauty there. Even amidst the imperfections that humans will definitely provide, there is still beauty in community, and you're designed to do it. But there's a humbling that needs to happen. There's a surrender that needs to happen. And so before you hold yourself accountable to going to the community, I challenge you to hold yourself accountable to the surrender piece. See if you can get yourself to feel small without beating yourself up. And if you can get there, then you'll create a natural need for others. Then you just got to find the right community to fill it. So those are my final thoughts. I love you guys. Thank you so much. I know 1 hour and 20. This is our longest one because it was my favorite one by far. I'm going to watch it back. If you guys want to join us next week, we will see you then. Until then, always get better.
See you. Good night, everybody.